Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. Today, we are here to take a look at a sneak peek at Mavuika, the upcoming Pyro Archon in Genshin Impact version 5.3. This video was filmed on the early access server and is not indicative of the final product. There may be some changes on release, so be sure to check the comments down below to see if there are any. Since this is an early access video, I'll show you what I can, which will include a high-level overview of her kit, 13 different teams, a detailed breakdown on her exploration capabilities, and my first impressions on Mavuika. So starting off, let's take a quick look at one of her idle animations where she just busts out this motorcycle and just chills on it. Now, I'm gonna have to be honest, I think she might be power creeping Citlali in terms of the chillin' type of vibes. And we can even see her actually going Super Saiyan here. Why are we here of all places? Well, we're going to take a look at one of the most important parts of any character's kit, and that is how good are they at taking out pigeons. So this is going to be my first time really trying this, but we're going to go ahead and come on, get him. Okay. And yes, in case you're not aware, she has a giant motorcycle which she utilizes to attack her enemies. Actually, I'm curious. Oh my gosh, you can run them over too. Now, why did I start here in Mondstadt of all places? Because, well, you know, we can take a look at her exploration outside of Natlan, where obviously she's very overpowered for exploration in Natlan. But what about outside of Natlan as well? Let's go ahead and try to cross the water here. So you can see her motorcycle can actually ride on the water. Not only that, but it can also glide in midair like that. And it is just enough juice to cross roughly this body of water. And let's also see how good she is at climbing walls real quick. We've got a pristine wall for her to climb. Oh my goodness, okay. Now you all have got to see this. I dove into the specifics of her exploration capabilities, focused on when she's actually outside of Natlan, and the results actually surprised me. All of these tests were done with Animo Resonance. As we can see, even outside of Natlan, her regular movement on her motorcycle rivals that of a Constellation 1 Yelan. And while Yelan needs 20 seconds to recharge 2 of her charges, Mavuika's motorcycle has a 15-second cooldown. And Mavuika is also able to dash on her motorcycle, going much faster at the cost of a much shorter duration. Without Phlogiston or her burst, it only lasts for a measly 3.88 seconds. However, with Mavuika's Elemental Burst, because her Night Soul points don't decrease for 7-ish seconds, she's able to go at maximum speed for 10-ish seconds. But regardless, raging through the streets of Teyvat on a flaming motorcycle doing wheelies is just incredibly satisfying. Finally, Mavuika's motorcycle can swim for around 4.68 seconds, glide for 3.5 seconds, and climb for 1.75 seconds. While climbing lasts the shortest, it goes up an incredible amount of distance for how fast it is, and its climbing duration is reset if you make it to a ledge, allowing you to rapidly climb up areas with multiple ledges. And needless to say, in Natlan, well, you can pretty much just ride around on her motorcycle nearly as much as you want, along with the fact that she also shortens Night Soul transmission cooldown as well. But all that exploration is fine and dandy, but that's probably not why you clicked on this video. We're also going to take a look at what her kit can do. So she has kind of two main playstyles, with the first one being just more of an off-field DPS character or damage character, where you can just press her elemental skill and you'll see that the orbital strikes are just hitting all the enemies around her. I mean, I'm not doing anything and she's pretty much essentially already cleared that first wave. And we can swap back onto her. Of course, now she's going to keep the ring for a decent amount of time. And there we go. Like, she can just keep orbital striking the enemy, and each strike, which hits I believe every 2 seconds, does indeed apply pyro. So that is absolutely great for those off-field pyro applicator lovers out there. And there we go, just like that. A very, very easy way to use Mavuika when it comes to kind of an off-field support playstyle. You just literally pop her skill and then she will just apply pyro all around her. Now the range on it isn't like insane or anything. Like if we use it here, We can see that now it's hitting the enemy, right? But now it's not. So we got to scoot in a bit closer. That's about the range roughly. It's about that much. So pretty solid range, but definitely not like, you know, insane amounts of range. Now the next part of her kit centers around her motorcycle, where she is now essentially an on-field main DPS character, with these being her basic attacks. You can see her just slamming the motorcycle onto her enemies. And while she's in this motorcycle mode, she has multiple different forms of attacks, like these crazy wheelies, which is her charged attack while she's in motorcycle mode. And she can even do crazy things like this with a dash into plunge attacks as well. Now, of course, we burned through her Night Soul points really fast, so that's why the motorcycle state didn't last as long, but you can see some pretty crazy things that she can do on her motorcycle. But let's be real here, that's not where her true power lies. Her true power lies with her elemental burst, which essentially super massively enhances her motorcycle mode. So we're gonna use her elemental burst. She has this epic animation and just slams on the reg, and just like that, the reg just it was cooked. Now the way that Mavuika works is that she actually does not utilize energy at all in order to get her elemental burst, which clearly you can see turns her into an absolute menace for a main DPS character. In order for her to actually gain energy, she and her teammates can spend Night Soul points, where now you can see that the Night Soul points are being spent in order for this her elemental burst to get charged. And a character like Shilinin will very quickly charge up Mavuika's elemental burst. We can see that just like that, it is basically full after Mavuika spent her Night Soul points plus Shilinin spending her Night Soul points. But we're going to need a few more details. Mavuika can hold up to 200 fighting spirit, with each Night Soul point spent leading to 1 fighting spirit. Mavuika can use her burst at 100 Night Soul points, which amplifies her burst's multiplier and her motorcycle's normal and charged attack multipliers. And of course, she can use her burst at 200 fighting spirit to maximize the damage that she does during her 7-second burst duration. Also, Mavuika provides a decent amount of bonus damage to the character that's on field based on how much fighting spirit she spent. In this example, we can see that Milani's first shark bite went up from 394,601 damage to 435,072 damage, which is definitely a non-negligible boost to Milani's damage. Fortunately, Mavuika actually consumes 80 to 90 Night Soul points herself over the course of her rotation, and normal attacks from the party generate 1.5 Night Soul points each, meaning that Mavuika can still be used to limited effectiveness on teams without other Natlan characters. But needless to say, clearly she's going to be best with other Natlan characters. Let's take a quick look at what a C0R1 Mavuika team can do. So this is definitely going to be, in my opinion, one of her better teams that you can possibly use with her. But I'm going to go into Shilinin, and now we have Citlali as well, who enables a few pretty nasty melts. As you can see, the boss is already done, and yeah. But I realized that was at world level 8, so I bumped it up to world level 9. All 13 of these following showcases were done at C0R1 and are mainly to demonstrate team synergies. Starting off with what I believe will be one of Mavuika's strongest teams. Mavuika, Bennett, Shilinin, and Citlali. As we can see, she's able to output an initial huge 1 million damage nuke, followed by a 296,000 damage melt on her charged attack. And well, the rest is history. This team specifically is likely going to be one of the strongest C0R1 teams in the entire game, as it's able to finally abuse forward melt and output multiple huge melts. Now what if you don't have Shilinin or don't plan to pull Citlali? Well, starting with if you don't have Shilinin. From purely a damage perspective, Sucrose's damage buffs are actually quite competitive. However, this team does have the minor drawback of not being at a full 200 fighting spirit for the next rotation. But honestly, this team is quite competitive to the previous team. Needless to say, you can also use Kazuha instead of Sucrose if you need more grouping, but as we can see, replacing Shilinin with someone like Sucrose is incredibly viable. Now what if you have no Citlali but you do have Shilinin? Well, you can use Furina in place of Citlali to enable vapes while also providing massive damage buffs. However, reverse vape is only a 1.5x multiplier in comparison to forward melt, which is a 2.0x multiplier, although you'll be much more consistent at vaping Mavuika's damage. This team is still an incredible team, and don't worry, we will also take a look at what it's like to not have either Citlali or Shilinin a bit further down. Now the next two teams are similar in that they just focus on raw pyro damage, starting with Bennett, Xiangling, and Shilinin. This is a mono pyro damage team that benefits from Xiangling's buffs. Because, fun fact, Xiangling also increases the pyro damage dealt by her team, which obviously Mavuika benefits greatly from. As for this other variation, you can even use Archaic Petra Zhongli for a much sturdier build and more personal damage for Mavuika. Now I do think these two teams are a bit worse than the vape or melt teams, but as we can see, they are still extremely potent. Now if you're sick of all the circles from Bennett's circle and even Mavuika's charge attack circles, well, at the very least we can get rid of one of those circles, aka Bennett's circle. Fortunately, we can replace Bennett with someone like Kazuha, and well, the damage is certainly much lower than with Bennett, but this allows you the much needed flexibility of, well, being able to move around. And at a certain point, more damage isn't always what you need, especially if mobility is what you're lacking. And here is one of the most fun and yet comical playstyles, Plunging Motorcycle. You'll notice that the second plunge here didn't actually melt because apparently her plunge attacks have some sort of standard ICD. Still, as we can see, our pudgy Mountain King friend here didn't last long at all, even against this suboptimal but extremely fun plunge build. Alright, I've shown you how great Mavuika is with either Shilinin or Citlali, but what if you have neither of them? Well, Mavuika can still absolutely be used with Bennett, Kachina, and a vape enabler like Yelan. Now you'll notice many different things in this clip, including that I'm actually using her normal attacks, which work reasonably well, and we can also see the issue with circle impact because the boss moved out of Bennett's circle, as well as we can see Mavuika getting knocked off of her motorcycle right after Mavuika's burst motorcycle ended. Mavuika does have super duper armor during her burst motorcycle state, but in her regular motorcycle mode she doesn't have much super armor. We were also able to extend this rotation in her regular motorcycle state to finish off our pudgy Mountain King friend. And finally, we have a pretty solid 4-star only team. Although admittingly, this team gets much better with Constellation 6s on all the 4 stars. This is a Chevreuse overloaded team with Bennett, Auroron, and Chevreuse. And as we can see, we pretty much always want another Natlan character with Mavuika, especially main DPS Mavuika, so in this situation, Auroron is pretty much our only option. Bennett, Auroron, and Chevreuse are at Constellation 6 in this specific showcase, so do keep that in mind. But as we can see, with their constellations on the 4 stars, this is also quite a solid team, able to single cycle our pudgy Mountain King friend. Let's also take a look at how good of an off-field pyro applicator Mavuika can be for Milani. So in this case, it's a pretty simple rotation. You just apply pyro or hydro, then you do Shilinin stuff, go for the swirl into Mavuika's burst to provide the buff, use her skill in order to have the off-field skill do damage like that, and just like that, you can see that Mavuika's orbital strikes are indeed able to apply enough pyro for Milani to very comfortably vape. Now, this is a bit more iffy in AoE scenarios, but it is still, overall pretty reasonable to pull off. Now, hilariously, Mavuika is actually a really solid teammate, especially for Constellation 0 New Valette. As we can see, Mavuika is even able to enable 1 or 2, possibly even more vapes, depending on how you play. And yeah, personally, I actually really like her as a replacement for Furina, particularly for Constellation 0 New Valette. But of course, once you get Constellation 1 New Valette, I would still stick with the New Valette plus Furina combo. Now, unsurprisingly, Mavuika is going to be a great Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City support for a character like Kanish, because not only does she provide the scroll buff, she also provides her elemental bursts bonus damage buff when she spends that fighting spirit. However, there are some restrictions to this team, like for example, starting off with a rotation, we're going to do something like this. And yeah, that hit didn't crit, but also I think the robot chicken was still like in its elevated resistance state, but it doesn't matter. Look at how fast it died. So yeah, one restriction and issue with her supporting a burning team though is that it is very difficult after the first burning that is triggered on an enemy to have Mavuika trigger the burning again, and this is because pyro will stay on the enemy, burning the dendro off, and therefore Mavuika herself won't be able to reapply the scroll of the hero of Cinder City after the first rotation. But nonetheless, this is still an incredible improvement, especially against shorter fights or against, you know, just an enemy that'll die in 1 or 2 rotations. Mavuika, Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City, is a great addition. And we have one last quick off-field Mavuika showcase, which you might be wondering, how is she with Chaska? And well, she's pretty great with Chaska, especially for a double pyro setup. Double pyro with Chaska works reasonably well, and either Citlali or Furina are great options for the 4th slot, with Citlali even enabling a massive melt from Mavuika's burst. Overall, Mavuika is an incredible teammate for Chaska as well. Now, frankly speaking, I think Mavuika is power creep, but power creep done in a reasonable manner. She power creeps exploration from a jack-of-all-trades perspective, even outside of Natlin. Frankly, if I could have just one character to start with, it would be Mavuika, as she'll make so many challenging exploration segments trivial in comparison to any individual other character in the game. And from what I can see so far, she likely is one of the strongest Constellation Zero DPS characters in the game. Oh, and I forgot to mention that she also has super armor during her burst as well, so she's got that quality of life going for her too. She power creeps Xiangling in many teams because of her shorter cooldown, lack of energy recharge required, and by providing a lot of bonus damage through her burst as well as the Cinder City. This makes her much easier to use in a lot of teams that don't require overwhelming amounts of pyro application. Although there are still many teams where Xiangling is better, but Mavuika is certainly an upgrade in many different teams. Speaking of which, I have a feeling that even as DPS characters get better, Mavuika's off-field pyro application and being able to use the Cinder City along with her built-in bonus damage buff will stand the test of time, even when stronger DPS characters are released after her. Still, the amount that she power creeps isn't like an absurd amount at Constellation Zero, and in order to draw out her full potential, she definitely wants another Natlin character on her team, particularly Xilanin or Citlali, as the two of them enable Mavuika to either be an absurd DPS as well as being a very powerful support core. But the one thing that she cannot power creep, and in fact is still beholden to, is the true pyro archon Bennett. Now in my opinion, Mavuika is insanely fun. While the motorcycle definitely can be seen as immersion breaking, after getting used to it, frankly, I just can't get enough of it. There's just something cathartic about running your enemies over with this incredible work of modern engineering. Not only that, but there is a lot of complexity in her kit that isn't typically seen in most other Genshin Impact characters. Mavuika actually has a lot of different combos, like plunge combos, dash cancel combos, and more, with each serving a different purpose, although admittingly for most situations, just making donuts with her charge attack seems to be the best option. Frankly, the complexity in her kit actually reminds me of what they do with Zenless Zone Zero characters, and, well, that's not the only thing that Zenless Zone Zero has inspired in her. And while I wasn't allowed to show any Abyss footage or frankly anything that wasn't in this video, I'll have the usual much more detailed Constellation Zero showcase as well as a full guide video shortly after her release. And on release day, I will be able to show you guys a full Constellation showcase video that you guys can enjoy. Let me know what you think about Mavuika down below and let me know what you think about her motorcycle. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Want to Lose, signing out.